I can construct for you a spherically symmetrical universe with Earth at its center, and you cannot disprove it based on observations. You can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. In my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. What I want to bring into the open is the fact that we are using philosophical criteria in choosing our models. A lot of cosmology tries to hide that. Physicist George F.R. Ellis. Point blank, the quote says it pretty clearly right here. You can't disprove it that the Earth is at the center and stationary and geocentric. It's philosophy. Albert Einstein. I have come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment. To the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments, we have already remarked that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result. Physicist Albert Einstein. From the Michelson-Morley experiment, this is what he said about the experiment. He said, "This conclusion directly contradicts the explanation which presupposes that the Earth moves." Einstein stole his work from this guy. Wonder why you haven't heard about him. A great deal of research has been carried out concerning the influence of the Earth's movement. The results were always negative. Next quote. There was just one alternative. The Earth's true velocity through space might happen to have been nil. Physicist Arthur Eddington. It is both amusing and instructive to speculate on what might have happened to such an experiment if such an experiment could have been performed in the 16th or 17th centuries when men were debating the rival merits of the Copernican and Ptolemaic systems. The results would surely have been interpreted as conclusive evidence for the immobility of the Earth, and therefore as a triumphant vindication of the Ptolemaic system and irrefutable falsification of the Copernican hypothesis. Physicist G.J. Whitrow. The apparent alignment in the cosmic microwave background in one particular direction through space is called evil, because it undermines our ideas about the standard cosmological model. The Copernican principle seems to be in jeopardy. Physicist Ashok Singhal. Quote, "No longer could astronomers hope that the Copernican dilemma, as in the dilemma with their philosophical preference that the Earth is not special, that the Copernican dilemma would disappear with improved data. The data were in hand, and their implication inescapable. We are at the center of a spherically symmetric distribution of gamma ray burst sources, and this distribution has an outer edge. Oh, it's supposed to be infinitely expanding in all directions with no location preference regarding the Earth. The evidence showed us the opposite of that. And when they first got the evidence showing us that the Earth's at the center, they thought, oh man, puts the Copernican principle in jeopardy. This is a dilemma. But once we get better, more improved data, then we'll know for sure that we're good and actually we're not at the center. And then the more improved data came, and it showed even more definitively that the Earth is in the center. Astrophysicist Jonathan Katz. Next, we have a lot of quotes. Next quote. Well, when you look at the CMB map, that's the cosmic microwave background, you also see that the structure that is observed is in fact, in a weird way, correlated with the plane of the Earth around the sun. Is this Copernicus coming back to haunt us? That's crazy. Or looking out at the whole universe, that would say we are truly the center of the universe. Physicist Lawrence Krauss, who is atheist of all atheists. Crazy. What happened when the experiment was done in 1887? That's Michelson-Morley. There was never in any orientation at any time of the year, any shift in the interference pattern. None. No shift. No fringe shift. Nothing. As in, the difference didn't change throughout the year. in any orientation. What's the implication? Here was an experiment that was done to measure the speed of the Earth's motion through the ether. This was an experiment that was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be. It could have detected speeds as low as 2 miles a second instead of the known 20 miles per second that the Earth is in its orbital motion around the sun. It didn't detect it. What's the conclusion from the Michelson-Morley experiments? The implications is that the Earth is not moving. Physicist Richard Wolfson. Next quote. There is no planetary observation by which we on Earth can prove that the Earth is moving in an orbit around the sun. Thus, all Galileo's discoveries with the telescope can be accommodated to the system invented by Tycho Brahe just before Galileo began his observations of the heavens. In this Tychonic system, the planets move in orbits around the sun, while the sun moves in an orbit around the Earth in a year. Furthermore, the daily rotation of the heavens is communicated to the sun and planets, so that the Earth itself neither rotates nor revolves in an orbit. Physicist Bernard Cohen. Quote, before Copernicus, people thought that the Earth stood still and that the heavens revolved about it once a day. Copernicus taught that really the Earth revolves once a day and the daily rotation of the sun and the stars is only apparent. Galileo and Newton endorsed this view, and many things were thought to prove it. For example, the flattening of the Earth at the poles, and the fact that bodies are heavier there than at the equator. But in the modern theory, the question between Copernicus and his predecessors is merely one of convenience. All motion is relative, and there is no difference between the two statements. The Earth rotates once a day, and the heavens revolve about the Earth once a day. The two mean exactly the same thing, just as it means the same thing if I say that a certain length is 6 feet or 2 yards. Astronomy is easier if we take the sun as fixed than if we take the Earth. Let's read that again here. Astronomy is easier if we take the sun as fixed than if we take the Earth. Oh, that's how we determine what's true. Whatever's easiest and goes with our philosophy. We should probably teach children this as definitive fact. Next quote. I tell my classes that had Galileo confronted the church in Einstein's day, he would have lost the argument for better reasons. You may use my name if you wish. Mathematician Carl Wolfman. Quote. The ancient argument over whether the earth rotates or the heavens revolve around it, as Aristotle taught, is seen to be no more than an argument over the simplest choice of a frame of reference. Obviously, the most convenient choice is the universe. Nothing except inconvenience prevents us from choosing the earth as a fixed frame of reference. If we choose to make the earth our fixed frame of reference, we do not even do violence to everyday speech. We say that the sun rises in the morning, sets in the evening. The Big Dipper revolves around the North Star. Which point of view is correct? Do the heavens revolve or does the earth rotate? The question is meaningless. Physicist Martin Gardner. Just so you know, pretty much every single physicist, astronomer, astrophysicist, and cosmologist and philosopher on this list are very, very famous and very prominent and very accredited. The reason that they're there is not because we are appealing to their authority. I am certainly not doing that. It is because the number one weapon used against us as a form of gaslighting and the form of psychological manipulation is to try to convince us that we're crazy because we're going against all of the experts. Quote, if the earth isn't moving relative to the ether, then earth alone among the cosmos is at rest relative to the ether. Now that may be an absurd possibility, but maybe it's true. I think you can see. Now think about the bias in that, right? Like, no, now that may be an absurd possibility. Why? Because that's what all the evidence shows. You're actually speaking backwards. Anyway, now that may be an absurd possibility, but maybe it's true. I think you can see that this is not going to be very philosophically satisfying, and it isn't satisfying physically either. but it violates the Copernican principle that the Earth isn't special. It is particularly absurd in light of what we know from modern cosmology, namely that there are places in the universe, distant galaxies in particular, that are moving away from us at speeds very close to the speed of light. It's absurd to imagine that everything in the universe is pinned to Earth when there are such a wide range of speeds relative to Earth throughout the universe, but it suffices to rule it out on this philosophical ground. Now, quote, the Michelson-Morley experiment confronted scientists with an embarrassing alternative. On the one hand, they could scrap the ether theory, which explains so many things about electricity, magnetism, and light. Or, if they insisted on retaining the ether, they had to abandon this still more venerable Copernican theory that the Earth is in motion. To many physicists, it seemed almost easier to believe that the Earth stood still than that waves, light waves, and electromagnetic waves could exist without a medium to sustain them. It was a serious dilemma and one that split scientific thought for a quarter century. Many new hypotheses were advanced and rejected. The experiment was tried again by Morley and by others, with the same conclusion. The apparent velocity of the Earth through the ether was zero. Historian Lincoln Barnett. The easiest explanation was that the Earth was fixed in the ether and that everything else in the universe moved with respect to the Earth and the ether. Such an idea was not considered seriously, since it would mean in effect that our Earth occupied the omnipotent position in the universe with all the other heavenly bodies paying homage by moving around it. Older quote here, I have already known a long time that we do not yet have proof for the system of Copernicus, but I shall not take the risk to be the first one attacking it. Alexander von Humboldt. Next. The Earth is indeed the center of the universe. The arrangement of quasars on certain spherical shells is only with respect to the Earth. These shells would disappear if viewed from another galaxy or quasar. This means that the cosmological principle will have to go. Also, it implies that a coordinate system fixed to the Earth will be a preferred frame of reference in the universe. Of course, it is for all things that we do anyway. Anything that we do, we use the Earth as the fixed frame of reference. Anything that we do in the real world, any practical use case. Consequently, both the special and general theory of relativity must be abandoned for cosmological purposes. Y.P. Varshini, the redshift hypothesis for quasars, is the Earth the center of the universe? Astrophysics and Space Science, page 43, 1976. Next quote. I have two things to say that might surprise you. First, geocentrism is a valid frame of reference. And second, heliocentrism is not any more or less correct. Astronomer Phil Plait. So if Earth is at rest relative to the ether, then it alone is at rest. That makes us pretty special. Do you really want to return to this pre-Copernican idea? Do you really think you and your planet are so special that in all the rich vastness of the universe, you alone can claim to be at rest? Stop making claims about the distances, begging the questions, conflating multiple models, and then trying to pretend you have some type of logical postulation that you're enlightening us with, my guy. One can, of course, believe anything one likes as long as the consequences of that belief are trivial. But when survival depends on belief, then it matters that belief corresponds to manifest reality. We therefore teach navigators that the stars are fixed to the celestial sphere, which is centered on a fixed Earth, and around which it rotates in accordance with laws clearly deducible from common sense observation. The sun and moon move across the inner surface of the sphere, and hence perforce go around the Earth. This means that students of navigation must unlearn a lot of the confused dogma they learned in school. Most of them find this remarkably easy, because dogma is as may be, but the real world is as we perceive it to be. If Andrew Hill will look in the Journal of Navigation, he will find that the Earth-centered universe is alive and well. Darcy Pettyhoff, Royal Air Force College, Cranwell, Lincolnshire, England, New Scientist 79, volume 83, 1168, page 543. Next quote. Today, we cannot say that the Copernican theory is right and the Ptolemaic theory is wrong. In any meaningful sense, the two theories are physically equivalent to one another. Science today is locked into paradigms. Every avenue is blocked by beliefs that are wrong. And if you try to get anything published in a journal today, you will run up against a paradigm and the editors will turn you down. Astronomer Fred Hoyle. who coined the term Big Bang. Again, next quote from the same guy. We might hope, therefore, that Einstein's theory, which is well suited to such problems, would throw more light on the matter. But instead of adding further support to the heliocentric picture of the planetary motions, the Einstein theory goes in the opposite direction, giving increased respectability to the geocentric picture. Again, Sir Frederick Hoyle, Nicholas Copernicus, an essay on his life and work, page 87. Next quote. This null result was one of the great puzzles of physics at the end of the 19th century, obviously talking in context of Michelson-Morley. One possibility was that velocity would be zero and no fringe shift would be expected, but this implies that the Earth is somehow a preferred object. Only with respect to the Earth would the speed of light be c as predicted by Maxwell's equations. This is tantamount to assuming that the Earth is the central body of the universe. Dudley Clank-Cole, Physics Principle with Applications, 1985, page 613 through 14. In 1980, page 625, physics textbook. Next quote. Obviously, I'm speeding up. We're almost at the end. Whether the Earth rotates once a day from west to east, as Copernicus taught, or the heavens revolve once a day from east to west, as his predecessors believed, the observable phenomena will be exactly the same. This shows a defect in Newtonian dynamics, since an empirical science ought not to contain a metaphysical assumption which can never be proved or disproved by observation. Dennis Schema, the unity of the universe. And this should go without being said. They've conflated philosophy and metaphysical assumptions and beliefs with science to brainwash the masses. Next quote. Again, once more for the record. It has been shown at least 6 different ways this century alone that the equations in physics used by NASA to launch satellites are identical to the equations derived from a geocentric universe. Thus, if the space program is proof of anything, which it's not, it proves geocentricity and disproves heliocentrism. The evidence for heliocentrism is even weaker than the evidence for evolution. Oh, man, this guy doesn't like evolution. He's just one of those guys. You guys got to calm down, man. Drink some water. Astronomer Gerardus Bow, PhD. Next quote. But what is less known is that Tycho Brahe, Kepler's tutor. How interesting is that? Tycho Brahe was Kepler's tutor. Like Kepler's planetary motion, laws of planetary motion. But what is less known is that Tycho Brahe, Kepler's tutor, developed a geostatic system that was just as accurate and elegant as Kepler's. He probably stole it, just like Einstein. That's all that ballers can do. The sun orbits around the Earth, and all the other planets orbit around the sun. The trajectories are ellipses, and all the Kepler's laws are satisfied. Luka Popovic, Newton-Machian analysis of Neo-Tychonian model of planetary motions, 2013. Next quote. We can take either the Earth or the Sun or any other point for that matter as the center of the solar system. This is certainly so for the purely kinematical problem describing the planetary motion. If we wish to consider the Earth to be at rest, it will be necessary to give an annual epicyclic motion to every object in the distant universe, as well as to the planets of the solar system. We cannot dismiss such a procedure simply on grounds of inconvenience or quote-unquote absurdity. And of course, that's what exactly is done. That's again Fred Hoyle. Next quote, we got like 10 more. Quote, often the simplest of observations will have the most profound consequences. It has long been a cornerstone of modern science to say nothing of man's cosmic outlook, that the Earth attends a modest star that shines in an undistinguished part of a run-of-the-mill galaxy. Life arose spontaneously and man evolved on this miscellaneous clump of matter and now directs his own destiny without outside help. This cosmic model is supported by the Big Bang and expanding universe concepts, which in turn are buttressed by the simple observation that astronomers see redshifts wherever they look. These redshifts are due, of course, to matter flying away from us under the impetus of the Big Bang. But redshifts can also arise from the gravitational attraction of mass. Allegedly. If the Earth were at the center of the universe, the attraction of the surrounding mass of stars would also produce redshifts wherever we looked. The argument advanced by George Ellis in this article is more complex than this, but his basic thrust is to put man back into a favored position in the cosmos. His new theory seems quite consistent with our astronomical observations, even though it clashes with the thought that we are godless and making it on our own.